debate. Reprise du débat, the Honourable Member for Hamilton West and Castor Dundas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be sharing my time with the member for Winnipeg North. It's an honor to rise today to speak on Bill C-9, the Combating Hate Act, a bill that represents more than just legislative reform. It reflects our Liberal government's commitment to protecting all Canadians from intimidation, harassment, and the very real threat of hate in their communities. This legislation embodies our values as a society and recognizes that when people are afraid to attend their places of worship, schools, or cultural centers, the very fabric of our communities are under attack. We're witnessing a troubling increase in hate across Canada, with Jewish Canadians receiving a disproportionately high amount of hate, along with Muslim, queer, racialized communities across this country. In Hamilton, Jewish Canadians account for less than 1% of the general population, but are subject to over 80% of religious-based hate crimes, highlighting the urgent need for targeted protections. I want to thank the Hamilton Jewish Federation and the Radha Krishna Temple and their communities for their valuable input and advocacy in shaping this legislation, and of course the broader Hamilton Jewish and Hindu communities for their valuable input. I also want to extend my gratitude to the Minister of Justice and the Minister of Public Safety for their leadership and commitment to addressing hate in all its forms, and in particular recognizing the Minister of Public Safety who visited Hamilton earlier this year to visit with the Hamilton Jewish community, Jewish leaders, and with Hamilton Police. Recent data from Statistics Canada shows that police-reported hate crimes have more than doubled in the past 6 years, rising by 169%. This is not just a statistic. It represents families who fear sending their children to school, communities who fear gathering to celebrate or pray, and individuals whose very identities are being targeted. We've seen physical assaults, harassment in places of worship, targeted shootings at religious schools, and attacks and bomb threats directed at synagogues and mosques, temples and churches, schools, and community centers. In response to these alarming developments, there have been calls from across the country for stronger protections. Bill C-9 responds to these calls by introducing new offenses to criminalize intimidation and obstruction, enhancing the legal framework for prosecuting hate crimes, and addressing the promotion of hatred through symbols associated with terrorism and hate. This bill introduces a new intimidation offense, and this offense would make it illegal to provoke fear in another person to impede their access to a place of worship, a school, or a cultural center that is primarily used by an identifiable group. Likewise, this bill introduces a complementary obstruction offense, which targets conduct that intentionally blocks or interferes with lawful access to these spaces. Both offenses would carry a maximum penalty of 10 years in prison. And it's important to emphasize that these offenses do not target peaceful expression or assembly. They specifically target morally reprehensible criminal behaviors directed against individuals trying to access these spaces that are essential to their identities and their communities. This is about protecting Canadians from harm, not reducing their rights to protest or express themselves peacefully. Another critical provision of the Combating Hate Act is the new introduction of a hate crime offense. This offense would apply to any federal offense motivated by hatred based on grounds such as race, ethnicity, religion, or sex. By explicitly addressing crimes motivated by hate, this provision ensures that these acts are clearly condemned appropriately and appropriately punished. This offense is structured to allow the Crown to proceed in summary conviction in less serious cases, while escalating penalties for more serious offenses. For example, someone convicted of uttering threats under this provision would face a maximum of 10 years in prison if it was for hate-motivated reasons, compared to 5 years under the current law. In addition, Bill C-9 introduces a new hate propaganda offense to criminalize the intentional public display of symbols associated with hate or terrorism for the purpose of promoting hatred against an identifiable group. This includes symbols such as the Nazi swastika, the SS bolts, and symbols principally used or associated with terrorist entities listed in the criminal code, such as Hamas and Hezbollah. I want to stress that this offense is carefully tailored. It does not criminalize symbols displayed for legitimate purposes, such as education, journalism, or the arts. This ensures that freedom of expression is respected while giving law enforcement and prosecutors a clear tool to respond to criminally motivated hate. To further enhance clarity and consistency, this bill codifies the definition of hatred in the criminal code based on the Supreme Court jurisprudence focusing on detestation or vilification. It does not include mere disdain or dislike, and codifying this definition ensures that Canadians, law enforcement, the courts have a clear understanding of what constitutes hate in law. And this provision is specifically critical to assist police to determine when arrests are warranted and to remove some interpretation and ambiguity that may be present with the current laws. Finally, Bill C-9 proposes to remove the requirement for the Attorney General's consent to prosecute certain hate propaganda offenses and new offenses, while safeguards remain through the discretion of the Crown prosecution, who assesses the reasonable prospect for conviction and public interest before proceeding with charges. Mr. Speaker, this bill is about taking action when action is needed. When Canadians fear walking into their synagogue, mosque, church, or school, we must act. When individuals are attacked because of who they are, we must act. When speech is used to promote hatred and violence, we must act. With Bill C-9, the Combating Hate Act, we are taking action. We're acting to protect our communities, to defend the fundamental values of our country, and to affirm that Canada is a country that says no to hate and yes to safety and dignity for everyone. And I will acknowledge that it is unfortunate that this legislation is necessary. It's a direct response to the growing and targeted hatred across Canada. But of course, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is fundamental to our government. Freedom of expression, freedom of association, right to protest are cornerstone Canadian values. But no one has the right to promote hate. Municipalities across Canada, including Hamilton, where as a former city councillor, are already moving forward with municipal bylaws similar to what's intended here. But instead of forcing municipalities and provinces to have a patchwork of individual bylaws to combat the hatred they're seeing in their communities, we're taking action at the federal level to set national standards. I call on all parliamentarians to support this bill and to work together to ensure that it passes promptly. This is an important step in fulfilling our Liberal government's commitment to strengthen community safety and uphold the fundamental rights of Canadians. Mr. Speaker, in my conversations with residents across Hamilton who have been subject to hate, it is absolutely heartbreaking to hear their stories of intimidation, hatred that they've faced in their communities. In particular, I want to thank representatives from the Hamilton Jewish Federation for sharing their stories with me, being frank and forward and sharing exactly what it is like to be a member of their community in the city of Hamilton when there are incidences of hate. So, Mr. Speaker, through you, I am, again, recognize that it's unfortunate that we have to proceed with this legislation, but in consultation with those groups directly affected and also in consultation with law enforcement, we have no doubt that this is the appropriate action at this time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.